Melissa, and I'm going to show you how I made a solar wax melter. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is not the best solar wax melter, but if you just want to make something really quick and easy right now, because say you don't have a table saw or a jigsaw or a way to cut wood, or the time like me, I have an 18-month-old son that's running around, even just a couple hours it might take to build one out of wood is just too much for me. So this is a quick and easy way to make one, especially if you might even have all this stuff sitting around your house. I've been keeping bees for over 10 years and I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. Because, so what you do is you put foam into your melter and it melts the comb. And I knew all of that, but you know, I have a crock pot and I can melt lots of honeycomb really fast that way. But the reason why I made a solar wax melter is because I never knew what to do with that old dark comb. You know, that stuff that's just full of propolis that you find in the brood section. And I used to melt it in the crock pot, but it was just a big mess. It was a lot of work, a lot of electricity, and I got almost no beeswax out of it. So the solar wax melter is a great option if you want to do something with that old dark comb and you feel bad just throwing it away. You're not going to get a ton of beeswax out of it, but you'll get something. And the other great thing that this is used for is if when you come home from checking your bees, you just have a little ball of wax or just a little piece of comb or something, you can just throw it in there and you don't have it sitting around or storing it in your freezer or having to run your wax melter just for a little ball of wax. So what you're going to need is, for my solar wax melter, I'm going to call this Beekeeping Like a Mom, because this is a real fast, cheap, and easy way to do it. You're going to need a cooler. I got the styrofoam cooler, which right now COVID is going on, so these are sold in grocery stores. You don't even have to go to any other kind of store to get it. You don't have to pay to have something very large shipped to you. You find them in the grocery store. If you can't see them in your grocery store, that's probably because they're hidden up above the food. Sometimes I didn't find this one until I looked up above in the freezer section. They were like way up 8 feet off the ground. And then I had to use like something to knock it down. So you can use a non-styrofoam cooler if you have maybe one sitting around that you rarely use the cooler. You can use that also, but what you want is to be able to take the lid off and not have a hinge. And the only kind of cooler I could find, actually, even going to Walmart and Target, I couldn't find any coolers that I could take the lid fully off. There was always a big plastic hinge. The styrofoam cooler was the only one I could find. Next thing you're going to want is a pan to put inside the cooler. So it's going to have to be roughly the size of the inside of your cooler. This pan is, let me see. By 9, just a foil pan, and it would be better to, so ideally you want it to just sit in here. Now my cooler is like an inch longer and I don't really see the big deal. Sometimes wax gets in past the pan and it's really easy to just pick it out once it hardens up, because this is styrofoam, so the wax doesn't stick to it very well. And this pan is actually just a little bit larger than the inside of my cooler, so just like, you know, push in the edges just a little bit, and then just get it to fit right down inside there. However you need to do it, that's what the aluminum foil pans work really well for that. And if you don't like to use disposable things, I mean, this one is what I was using before, and I had this one for months. So this isn't something that's a one-time use. You'll get a lot of uses out of it before you want to replace it with a new foil pan. And that you want to be able to fit down in the very bottom, but if it doesn't have to sit at the very bottom, you just want it to be below your basket. So next what you need is a basket. This is my beautiful basket, and I made this basket from hardware cloth. So I bought a roll of hardware cloth years ago, and if you ever make beekeeping equipment, or even just are a beekeeper, I really recommend just having a roll of this number 8 hardware cloth on hand. If you ever need to introduce a queen, you would make a queen cage out of this size hardware cloth. If you ever need to move your bees, it's nice to have them on a screened bottom so you have easy ventilation, or if you're ever catching, doing a cutout and taking bees from an area and having to bring them back home, it's good to have them over a screened bottom. So it's really good just to have a roll of this stuff around that you'll probably be using over the course of the year. Maybe even if you know other beekeepers, chip in and share the roll with them. But you can use a smaller size hardware cloth. However, the thing is that you don't want the holes to be bigger than the size of a bee, because if they are, then when you put a honeycomb in there, it's going to melt the beeswax. The beeswax is going to go through the holes of the hardware cloth, but you're going to have like this stuff sitting inside your basket. And this is all the little propolis casings. If you are ever doing some natural pest management techniques, you would be, one of them, a big one, is freezing drone comb. So if you freeze drone comb and then want to get the beeswax out of that comb, you're going to have those little drone pupa. And so you don't want them falling through the holes of your hardware cloth. The purpose is to filter the beeswax. So you want holes that are smaller than the size of a bee, which is, you know, about 3/8 of an inch. But you don't want the holes so small that they get clogged up really easily and don't let any wax through. And so I like to go with the number 8 hardware cloth because you can use it for so many other things when making things as a beekeeper. So what you want to do is you want to measure what you want the size of your basket to be. So inside my cooler, I have a little shelf right in here, and that's an easy place to put your hardware cloth. But since this is a styrofoam cooler, you could really just, you know, measure up 4 or so inches and measure what the size of that rectangle is in there. And the hardware cloth, since it's wire mesh and this is styrofoam, it'll just kind of, you just wedge it in there and it'll just sit in a little crevice that you make for it inside the styrofoam. So you want to measure in your space. Since we have a shelf, we're going to measure that. And that is 14.5 by 10. So what you want is you want the final size of your basket to be 14.5 by 10. Now you're going to want to add a couple of inches as kind of like the walls of your basket. And for this one, I made my walls 3 inches, which is a good height. You can add it, make it 4 or 5 if it'll fit in there. And that helps to prevent your honeycomb from falling out of your basket and going down into your nice clean wax. The purpose of this wax melter is to separate the wax from everything else that's in your comb. So you're going to have your final size, and you're going to add 6 inches to each final size and cut that out of your hardware cloth. Once you're done that, you're going to want to make slits in your cloth so that it looks like this. You're going to cut 2 slits, one right here, 3 inches in. I'm going to cut a slit right here, 3 inches in, and 3 inches in from this side. You're going to do that to this side too. And then you're going to fold it up. You can take some wire, or maybe even a staple, and staple it together. But I found that this cloth is pretty sturdy, and it wasn't really necessary. And if I don't have to do a step, I don't usually. And especially now that I've been using this and it's got lots of wax around it, it really just stays in place all on its own. So fold it up so that it looks like a basket and put it inside your cooler. And again, if you don't have that little shelf built into your cooler, and just wedge it in there until it stops moving. You don't want it to sit on top of your foil tray down in here. You want it to be a couple of inches up. So that's our cooler. I'm going to get my comb and I'm going to place it inside the basket. So once you put your comb in here, you're going to put your top. Where is my top? There it is. Okay. So this is a little embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you all of the stupid things I've done while figuring out this wax melter. First thing I did was the glass piece that I put on top was from a frame that broke while we were moving. And so the frame was broken, but the glass piece was intact. So I put it right on top, and I took two of these guys and put them in the corners, and it worked great. But then my 18-month-old son came over to it, went like this on it real hard, and snapped it in two places. So if you have little kids, make sure you put this in a place so that you do not have it so that they can't get to it. The other thing I did, now I did actually tape it up and it still works. Now the next thing I did was I bought a frame that was plexiglass. But plexiglass frame tops are super flimsy. So if you do use plexiglass, you should probably go to a hardware store and get a thicker kind of plexiglass. Don't get a frame with a plexiglass cover, because those are super flimsy and thin, and that won't work. You need it to be glass or a very hard plexiglass in order for this to work. Now this works really well for us because we get a lot of sunshine here, but it's not going to work if you get like maybe just a few hours of sun in the morning. Then you're going to want to make like a wooden wax melter, maybe lined inside with aluminum foil as well, and have it sealed a little bit tighter. But for me, having the glass top and the styrofoam cooler works well enough. I just put two clamps down on either corner, and we're good to go. So the sunlight is coming down right now from there, so I grab a rock and I just put it under the back so that it gets more sun. Usually we get the most sun in the morning, and then towards the afternoon is when the clouds roll in. And this wax will be melted usually within a few hours because we get a lot of sun here and it's pretty intense. But if it's not as sunny, then it might take all day or a few days, especially that dark comb that has lots of propolis in it. And what I'm left with is all of these, pieces of wax, and they're not totally clean, but these can sit around for a couple of weeks, and I can melt this all together in a month or so when I have enough. And it's a lot lighter than it would have been if I put that old dark comb straight into my crock pot. And now this looks a little bit better for my candles, and I don't have to worry about figuring out what to do with all those little pieces of wax from every time I check the bees. This is what you're going to be pulling out of your basket, is all these propolis and pollen pieces that didn't go through the basket because they don't melt into liquid form. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and if you have ideas for other videos you'd like to see me explain, leave them in the comments too. Right now at beekeepingmadesimple.com we have a free getting started guide that takes you through the 7 steps you need to go through to get started keeping bees. And it's a short guide, but I put a lot of time into it because when I was getting started, I spent a ton of time researching and still wasn't positive that I was doing it right. So I put everything in there that I wish I knew when I was getting started, so that I can help you guys get started too.